Hello students, welcome to Sunya IAS. I am Rishabh Jain, your friend, mentor and philosopher for political science and international relations. We are doing paper 2A, that is political science and international relations. There we have done comparative politics, we have done the topic of globalization. Today we are starting our journey with the topic which is most important in paper 2, and the different principles that you will learn in this topic will be applied across the paper 2. Okay, so one of the most important topic for your paper 2, make sure that you use whatever you learn in this class today in multiple different ways in the paper 2. We will tell you how you can use that. Now let's start with the topic. The topic is key theories in international relations. This is topic 5 in your syllabus. Okay, we will see and structure the PYQs later, and I have designed the slides in terms of PYQs only, but because I want to keep the duration of the lecture not very long, that's why I'm directly starting with the slides. I have arranged the slides in the topic in a very structured manner in terms of which the PYQs have been asked. And first we will revise the lecture, then we will try to structure some of the PYQs. So let's start with it. Now, origin of IR. So where does international relations truly start? This will be about that. Okay. So firstly, we will see what is this great debates. But ये great debates आपको तभी समझ में आएंगी जब हम थोड़ा सा आगे समझ लेंगे पहले कि कौन कौन से स्कूल ऑफ थॉट्स हैं, बिकॉज अल्टीमेटली इंटरनेशनल विद इन द इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस देर आर डिफरेंट स्कूल ऑफ थॉट्स, देर आर डिफरेंट थ्योरीज, एंड दीज थ्योरीज come in clash with one another, which has led to certain debates in IR. But you will only be able to understand those debates when you have learnt about the theory. So first we will focus on the theory. So this point we can see that how IR is youngest of all disciplines, which means that after the end of the World War, what was the most important goal that was there in front of the society? To establish peace, to establish that there is harmonious relations between different international actors, the most important one being the state. Okay, so it is the youngest of all disciplines in the political science, and the emergence of international relations is old, but in the modern times it has emerged after the end of World War. Okay, First World War actually. After the end of First World War, we see the emergence of international relations as a discipline, because we want to set up enduring peace. Okay. Now these are some of the great debates in international relations. We will see this towards the end of the lecture. Some of the introductions that you can use for international relations theories in the further topics are: first chair of international relations politics was Woodrow Wilson chair at University of Wales. So just after the First World War, which was around 1919, okay, this chair was established. 30 years of war in Europe. So basically in Europe, first there was 30 years of war in the 17th century. Then after those 30 years of war, there was a Treaty of Westphalia. What is Treaty of Westphalia? That before Treaty of Westphalia, there was no concept of nation state. Okay, there were different fiefdoms, there were different kingdoms, but there was no concept of formal nation state. And nation state has become the primary actors on the international stage. So there was 30 years of war from 1618 to 1648. Then in the 1648 Treaty of Westphalia was established, through which we saw the emergence of nation state. Okay, so you can also include this in your introduction. And what were the important components of nation state? Territorial integrity and sovereignty. Territorial integrity means that no other nation state should grab the territory of other nation state. How there should be sovereignty, which means that the nation state should be capable of having their own governance, their own rules, and no other entity should impose their rules on that body. And how there should be a centralized authority as well, which is there should be a government which should govern the area and it should be representative of the people. So nation state replaced Roman Empire, which was ultimately a confederation. Okay, what is confederation? Roman Empire, not important, just a comparative assessment. IR started and it is dominated by Americans. Why? We saw that after the First World War, US was constantly trying to establish itself as the #1 power. Okay, and if you want to establish yourself as the #1 power, then it is very, very important to study that how states behave. And that is why they established this discipline. And how can we say that they established this discipline? That American social sciences. So basically, scholars say that IR was so much dominated by US political thinkers and scientists that international relations was almost called as American social science. Okay. Then what was the next thing which happened in international relations? Woodrow Wilson, he gave his 14 points speech. So ultimately, after the First World War, they wanted to establish theories of peace. They wanted to establish harmonious relations between different countries. So Woodrow Wilson, he was one of the major key political theorists of international relations, and he gave a 14-point speech. He made a speech and he gave certain 14 points on which he said the new international politics will be pinned on. Ultimately, this didn't hold true. Why? Because we saw that how League of Nations was not really successful, how countries were still behaving in a manner which was not cognizant of these 14-point speech, but ultimately this was an idealistic idea to establish a world where there will be peace. So the goal was to establish new world order. Okay. Now certain models have been developed. Certain models have been developed, and these models help us to define the different phases of the world order. What is world order? These are some of the terminologies which you must use within your answers. World order, new world order. But for that, you must know that what are the fundamental concepts and principles. So, billiard ball model. What is billiard ball model? सबसे पहले देखते हैं किसने दिया है. This is given by Arnold Wolfers, and it is called as the realpolitik paradigm, which means that if there is less and less harmony between two different nation states, if there is a world order in which different nation states are colliding with each other to protect their own interests and there is no scope of cooperation, that model will be called as billiard ball model. Just like the billiard balls, there's a game, right? Billiards. So just like the billiard balls, they are colliding in the same way. Nation states are colliding with one another, they are fighting with one another, and there is no cooperation. So Arnold Wolfers, he said that nation states are like billiard balls. Okay. So this model says that the Westphalian world order, which is the world order which started from 1648, from Treaty of Westphalia. This world order, it is state-centric in nature. What is the meaning of state-centric? In 1648, nation state is established, and since then nations are the most important institutions on the global stage, and how they are the ones who are driving the international politics. Okay, so that is why the phase which started from 1648, it was similar to the billiard ball model because it was state-centric. There is anarchy. What is the meaning of anarchy? It is a very, very important concept in international relations. Keep noting down these keywords. Whatever I have, you will get the slides, so you don't have to worry. You will get all these slides, so you can revise them in your phone and your laptop. All the blue words that are there on the slides, I have specifically taken out time and mentioned them in blue, because these blue keywords which are there in the slides, specific marks are allotted for them when you are writing an answer and you are using these keywords. These keywords are the technical keywords of political science, and when you will mention them, it will truly make your answer unique. It will give your answer certain depth. Even if you have not mentioned any scholar, but you have mentioned these keywords, that shows that you have a command over the language of the subject. So anarchy means that, anarchy is a keyword. It means that when all the nation states, they will keep competing with one another for their own interest, and there will be no universal actor. Universal, what is the meaning of universal actor? An actor like United Nations. When there will be no such actor, then there will be anarchy and states will keep competing with one another. There will be lot of wars. And when there is no universal actor, then it is called as the self-help system. What is the meaning of self-help system? Self-help system means that only you yourself can protect your territorial integrity and sovereignty. For example, we have seen that how the existence of a nation state, that is Ukraine, its territorial integrity and sovereignty was being attacked by another nation state. But did any other nation came directly to protect it? Though certain European and certain European powers in America, they are giving weapons to Ukraine, but are we truly seeing that Ukraine is being protected by everyone, or how everyone are directly getting involved to protect the Ukraine? No. This shows that even in today's era, where people say that we have become modern and wars are not possible, even today we are living in a self-help system, which means that only you can help yourself. If today China attacks us, we are living in a self-help system. We cannot expect any other country to come to protect us. We will have to protect our own self. Okay, that is a self-help system. So when there is anarchy, there is no universal actor and there is self-help system. Now, what are billiard balls? So Arnold Wolfers has made a comparison between balls and nation states. Why? Because nation states are colliding, their interests are colliding with one another. Okay, and because of that, they are going to war with different actors. Now, why are they hard shells? What is the meaning of hard shells? Hard shells means that just like the billiard balls. So we see that if you have ever played a billiard game, you will see that the balls that are colliding with one another, they are hard ball, which means that they are not porous in nature, which means that there is no kind of interaction which is happening between one another, and how the territorial integrity and sovereignty is supreme, how the territorial integrity and the sovereignty is absolute. Okay, today we are seeing that how sovereignty in today's era is not absolute, and a certain sanctions can be posed on certain countries and everything. We will discuss that. But how in this model we are having hard shells where one ball is just protecting its own self and it is fighting for its territorial integrity and sovereignty. Okay, power is a zero-sum game. What is the meaning of zero-sum game? These are two, again, zero-sum game, non-zero-sum game. These are very, very, very important keywords. Zero-sum game means that if there is actor A and if there is actor B, these are two neighbor countries. If B is raising its nuclear stockpile, if B country is raising the amount of nuclear weapons that they have, then A country will think that, oh, B is raising the nuclear weapons so that they can attack us. What will A do? A will also have to go in a nuclear arms race, and they will also have to give money to the nuclear stockpile, and they will have to enhance their nuclear stockpile. This is called as security dilemma. So power is a zero sum game, means that if you are rising your power, then the other actors on the world will also have to rise their power to compete you, and it will become a zero sum game. The rise of power of one actor is looked out by another actor as being something which will threaten their existence, है ना? That is why it becomes zero sum game. Balance of power as common sense. What is the meaning of balance of power? Balance of power means that if there are 10 nation states and one nation state is emerging as the most strong nation state, okay, the one nation state in today's world order is China. China is emerging as a very, very rapid pace. Then we are seeing that how USA, how Japan, how China, how India, they are forming a coalition of countries to balance the rise of China, so that China does not dominate the Indo-Pacific region, so that China does not have a domination in the sense that it is truly controlling each and every passage of the sea lines of communication. Just for that reason, they are forming Quad, so that coalition of countries will come together and China will not be able to counter the coalition of 4 partners who have come in together to fight a common enemy, which is China. है ना? So balance of power becomes common sense. There is no cooperation that is possible between all the nations. And there are 4 to 5 great powers and no superpower is there. So one of the important points in this model is that there will be just some great powers and no superpower will be there. What is the difference between great power and superpower? Superpower is that power where if all the countries come together, in front of that power, then all that countries combined will not be able to fight that power. So which means that, let's say, if you will see, just after the end of Cold War, we saw the emergence of America's unipolar movement, or America's brief period of global hegemony, which lasted till the 9/11, till 9/11, and just after the end of the Cold War, what we saw was the unipolar movement of US, where it became even today it is a superpower, but in the technical sense, superpower means that if all the countries would have come together against US, even then US would have won. Okay, so in this model there will be only great powers. Great powers means that they are powers of significant impact on the international stage. Today India is a rising power, है ना? India is a middle power. What do we see? That there are different factors of power. India has a lot of military power, but we need to increase our economic power. There are different dimensions of power, and when all the dimensions of power come together, we see the emergence of a great power. For example, if we get a United Nations Security Council seat, we might see the emergence of India as a great power. है ना? So we need to have institutional power, we need to have structural power, we need to have military power, economic power, political power, cultural power. So what would be the example of a superpower today? Even today, we can say that China and US are the superpowers. Then who are the great powers? The great powers can be said are UK, United Kingdom, or Russia, or France. These are the great powers. Then who are the middle powers? Countries like Indonesia, South Africa, India. We are middle powers, or we are the rising powers. Now we come to the cobweb model. Cobweb model is a counter to the billiard ball model. Let's see it quickly. It is given by John Burton, and here they are talking about certain kind of dependence which each country will have on another country, and because of that certain dependence will be created. Here we were seeing that how countries are like hard shells, है ना, यहाँ पे porous हो जाएगा. Let's see that quickly. So it is a complex interdependence paradigm. We will see that liberals have further developed this theory of complex interdependence, है ना. John Burton was the first one who talked about it, but we will see that how Joseph Nye and Keohane, they developed this theory further. So they say that a world society with subnational and supranational level of interactions will emerge. What does this mean? World society means that unlike anarchy, where there is no cooperation possible, we will see a world society. That is, we see that how there is presence of society and community within a nation that support each other. In the same way, we will see the emergence of society at the global level, where there will be subnational, which means that within the country also there will be different societies, and at the supranational level as well there will be certain interactions and community will be there, which will ensure that there is some level of cooperation. So there is rise of cooperation. And what do they say? We will further look at different schools of thought, because we are in a quality enrichment program. That is why I can link different topics which I am doing. We will see that how Hedley Bull belongs to the school of liberal realism or institutional British. This comes from the British school of thought, है ना? So they mix liberalism and realism. Now anarchy is a school of thought which belongs to the realist, and the emphasis on society is given by liberals. So Hedley Bull says the same thing for today's context, that how we are living in an anarchical society. That is, there are anarchy, there are differences over some issues, but overall we are living in a place where cooperation is possible. For example, if new Cold War or Cold War 2.0 is emerging between USA and China, despite having this Cold War, we are seeing that how they are ready to cooperate on climate change. We are seeing that how, despite the differences in the strategic context over Taiwan, their trade is very high. Despite that, they are almost having a $4 billion trade. So this shows that there is presence of anarchical society. We can also call it as society of states. We will read that in Hedley Bull's work. Now they say that post-Westphalian world order, that is, after this Westphalian world order came to an end, we are seeing the witness of society-centric world order. We were seeing that how Westphalian world order is based on state-centrism. But here we will be witnessing society-centric world order, which is that except the state, other actors are also emerging and their importance is rising. It can also be called as multiplex world. Now what is the meaning of multiplex world? It is given by Bayliss and Smith. And Bayliss and Smith is saying that there are multiple actors at multiple levels, which means that at military level there are certain actors, at economic level there are certain actors, and we are truly witnessing a multiplex world where power is not equal in all the levels everywhere. At different levels, different power is there with different actors. For example, in economic realm, we are seeing the rise of transnational actors like MNCs, multinational corporations. We read about the multinational corporations in the globalization chapter, right? So these actors, they have shifted the world order from state-centric to geocentric or society-centric. there is impact of ICT revolution, information, communication and technology revolution has truly changed the nature of the world order. Now, he says that states have now become porous. We are seeing that how here in this model, states are not porous, they are like hard shells. Their territorial integrity and sovereignty is supreme. But as these actors will come, the states and their sovereignty will become porous. We are seeing that surveillance by the state has declined. In some ways it is rising also though. People are connected with one another just like the spider web. Okay. So ultimately I can explain you, I know that I am not explaining a lot. I am just telling you the linkages, but this is the agenda or the demand of the class, that I give you all the relevant keywords in the most systematic manner. For example, when we will discuss the PYQs and when I'll come and say that you can use cobweb model here, then I would expect that I'm talking about that you can use these keywords which are mentioned here in that subpart of the answer. Now there is old world order, which is the Westphalian world order, and then there is a new world order. So what is Westphalian world order? We saw that how there was 30 years of war from 1618 to 1648. Then we saw the emergence of Westphalian world order. Westphalian world order कब तक चलता रहेगा? जब तक न्यू वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर की बात नहीं आएगी. न्यू वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर कब आया? न्यू वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर आएगा जब वुड्रो विल्सन आके बोलेंगे अपनी 14 पॉइंट स्पीच में, इन हिज 14 पॉइंट स्पीच, Woodrow Wilson is trying to create a new world order. That is what he called as new world order. We will see what are the features and principles and everything. So Westphalian world order or the old world order, it is politics around European countries. What does this mean? That all the other countries of global south, of Latin America, of Africa, of Asia, they were irrelevant. Westphalian world order was truly just about the politics among the nations of Europe, because बाकी जगह colonization था. So it was ultimately great power politics. That is, only the great powers were involved in the politics, and that is why it remained a billiard ball model system, not a cobweb model system. Then US was following isolationism, which means that USA was saying by that time that we don't want to get involved in the politics of the world and everything, and we just want to focus on our own growth. So they were following their famous or infamous Monroe Doctrine. Rest of the world was colony or a periphery. So USA was following isolationist policy under Monroe Doctrine. Rest of the world was colony, so bacha Europe. Europe was the center of global politics in this era. Balance of power as a common sense. There were constant state of war, and for balancing, which means that to reduce the power of the rising power, there were two ways for that. One was internal balancing, the other was external balancing. What is the meaning of that? I'll give you an example for this internal and external balancing. Pause the video and think that what could be the answer, what could be the good example for it. So the good example can be that if China is having a rise on India's border, then what are we seeing? India is doing two things. First is internal balancing and the second is external balancing. To internally balance China, what are we doing? We are strengthening our economy through Atmanirbhar Bharat. Then we are doing reforms in terms of military. For example, we have launched the post of CDS. We are launching new infrastructure through the border road organization on the border areas. We are enhancing the strength of our army. New equipments we are getting, new missiles, new defense system like S-400 from Russia. These are all the internal mechanisms we are getting to balance out the rise of China. If China is getting 10 nuclear missiles, they are rising. If China is getting 10 warrior ships, then what are we doing? Internally, we are doing all this. What are we doing externally? Externally, we are also becoming part of certain coalitions like Quad. So Quad is very, very important in terms of India's ambition to externally say to China that we have other options to counter your rise. Okay. This kind of China's rise and India's reaction to it, what does this show about the world politics? That power is a zero-sum game. Power is a zero-sum game. Zero-sum game means that if you are rising your power, then that advantage that China has got after rising its power, it will be cancelled out, because India will also have to rise its power because of the security dilemma. So power is a zero-sum game. For example, if Pakistan was making efforts to get nuclear weapons, it was only after that where India also had to start its nuclear program. It was not like that we just wanted both Pakistan and China, they were already on path to attain nuclear power. That is why India had to start its research for the nuclear weapons. Okay, so internal and external balancing, I hope is clear. Now in the world, in the Westphalian world order, what was happening was that local wars were getting converted into world wars. One of the most important part, that if certain local wars are there, for example, if there is a war between two small countries of Europe, then because all the other countries of Asia, of Africa, of Latin America, they are the colonies of these Western countries, what will happen is that they will also use the resources of that colony to fight the war, and ultimately it will become a world war. Today that is truly difficult. Why? Because except NATO, there is not really any organization which is as strong as NATO, and every nation state is forming their own opinion about what are their interests. We are seeing that, be it Russia-Ukraine war, be it the Israel-Gaza issue, be it different conflicts which are emerging in Middle East, every nation state is having its own unique viewpoint. They are not following anyone's advice over what are their interests. So very less chances are there that local war will become a world war, right? Even in the issue that we are seeing between Israel and Hamas, or Israel and Gaza, we are seeing that how the conflict has just been confined to the Middle East. Okay, it has just been confined to the Middle East and the proxies of Iran, which is Hezbollah, which is Hamas, and which are the Houthi rebels. These three are the main proxies which are there, and they are working on the basis of Iran. So it is actually Israel and Iran that are in conflict. Okay. Now, New World Order. What is New World Order? This was a vision which was given by Woodrow Wilson in 1919, where he envisioned a certain society where there will be peace. Let's see it. So this is the school of liberalism. He says that we will establish peace on enduring basis, which means that we will establish peace for long term. They see international politics as peace theories. So liberal school, they see IP as peace theories, international politics as peace theories. We are coming together to do international politics so that we can establish peace for enduring basis. Now, regardless, so basically we saw that how in the Westphalian world order, how in the billiard ball model, they go for balance of power. Okay. But what will Woodrow Wilson say, or what will the liberals say is the best way to ensure that there is peace? As per this school of thought, as per the school of thought of the realists, they will say that balance of power is the best way to ensure that there is peace, because that will lead to no power coming out as the hegemon, right? But here they will say that balance of power is not sustainable. They say rather go for collective security. What is collective security? Collective security means that all the actors, all the different nation states, they will come together, and whenever one actor out of them, whenever that malicious actor will try to destabilize the world order by becoming a hegemon or by trying to attack that country, then any country rather, then all of them will come together and they will ensure that that country does not rise. Let me explain one again. If there would have been collective security in today's time, then what would have happened? If Russia would have attacked Ukraine, then each country in the world would have come to stop that attack and fight for Ukraine. That is collective security. Not even one country would have been outside that ambit. That would not have stopped. That would not have stopped Russia from the attack. Everyone would have stopped, but that did not happen. So it shows that how collective security remains an idea even today. And they say that no, self-help should not be the basis. Rather, collective security should be the basis. So, how did they give vision to the collective security? They established League of Nations. So, we see that how, what is anarchy? When there is no universal actor. But League of Nations emerged as the universal actor to remove the anarchy and to bring collective security. And these are these keywords which are on the blue in the slides. These are certain important concepts of international politics. We will in detail study these concepts in the topic 6, but in the topic 5 they are just being used. So I am clearing the basic concepts as well regarding this. Now, what are some of the important features of this kind of world order? The first feature is that there will be free trade, there will be freedom of navigation, which means that there will be international law. They also believe in promoting democracy. This you can interlink with democratic peace theory. Abhi aayegi aage democratic peace theory, we will study kya hai. It is just about promotion of democracy. Right to self-determination, which means that if there is some specific piece of land and people from that piece of land are saying that we should become a nation state, we have the right to ensure whatever kind of state we want to become. So that is called as self-determination. For example, if people in Gaza are saying that Gaza is an independent nation state, then liberals will say that they have a right to self-determination. There should be a referendum in this area, and if most people say that we should not be part of Israel, then we should not be part of Israel. That is what liberals say. So they have focus on individuals. So what are the core philosophies? They believe in freedom of navigation and trade, which means that they believe in international law. Then they believe in promotion of democracy, so they believe in democratic peace theory. They believe in right to self-determination. So, but New World Order was very short-lived. This is one of the critique of New World Order, that how the Second World War and the collapse of the League of Nations and the attack of Germany on different actors and how League of Nations was not able to do anything. It showed that how this 14-point speech by Woodrow Wilson, it just remained an idea. The vision of New World Order was very short-lived. What was the criticism of New World Order? So Noam Chomsky, he says that it was actually the protection of US hegemony, that US was just trying to protect its own hegemony by developing these institutions of League of Nations and everything. We will study about John Mearsheimer, a very, very important thinker. He say that these kind of ideas of New World Order, these are just great delusions. This is the name of his book. If there is any idea which is marked in yellow, usually it is the name of the book, I'll tell you. So this is the name of the book, Great Delusion, Liberal Dreams and International Realities. So John Mearsheimer says that international realities are that there is realism. States will always go for protecting their own interests. And the liberal dreams are the opposite. So they say that it is a great delusions of the liberals, like Woodrow Wilson to go for a new world order, and it is not possible. And that is what we see. Even today, it is the realists who are ultimately able to predict that what will happen. Now there are different phases of international politics. What are these phases? The first phase is Old World Order. What is the Old World Order? This is the Old World Order, Westphalian World Order. Okay. Then this remained on between 1648 to 1919. Ultimately 1648 में Treaty of Westphalia आया and 1919 में आपका फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर ओवर हुआ. तो यहाँ तक हमारा ओल्ड वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर, वेस्टफेलियन वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर या फिर ओल्ड वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर रहा. देन वी सॉ दैट बिटवीन वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 एंड वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 वी वर सीइंग दैट हाउ डिफरेंट visions were given by Woodrow Wilson and new world order was tried to be established. League of Nations and collective security, whatever they talked about, it actually collapsed. They were not able to work it out, and the new world order could not come into existence because US was following isolationism. UK and France, they were reluctant to counter the rise of Germany, and they were appeasing fascist power against the threat of communism. That is, they were wary of the communism which was coming from Russia, and because of this threat that was coming in the form of communism, they just kept amazing fascist power in the Germany. And there was old world order style politics that was going on, which was protectionism, arms race, alliances and counter alliances. All these are the features of old world order, and they continued. So how these ideas just remained on the books, but none of them turned into reality. So in reaction, so basically the ideas that were given by Woodrow Wilson, all these major ideas, none of them worked, right? So now, because these ideas were not working, we saw the emergence of modern realists. Who was this modern realist? So E.H. Carr. It is said that in the modern realism, this guy came सबसे पहले, and he challenged this liberal school of Woodrow Wilson. What did he say? He said that this Wilsonian New World Order. So now this is a keyword. This is a keyword like Wilsonian New World Order. Wilsonian New World Order. Wilsonian mean that Woodrow Wilson gave the principle for this. So in reaction to this, the realist school of international politics came, and E.H. Carr, very, very important thinker, he called these years from 1919 to 1939. So in 1939, we saw that how Second World War started. So he called these 20 years where liberals were trying to do all these things of League of Nations, of cooperation and collective security and all that. He says that these are actually 20 years crisis. Why? Because none of them came into reality. And he says that these people who call themselves as liberal, they are rather idealist or utopians, because none of this is the reality. And this led to the first great debate. So this is the first great debate in international politics. That is, liberals are trying to say that we can go for a cobweb model where interdependence is possible, there is harmony, but realists will keep coming back to the billiard ball model where there is importance of balance of power, and how the world order is, there is anarchy in world order, and how different nation states are like hard shells interacting with one another. Okay, so this is the first great debate in international politics. Okay, let's see the first great debate. The first great debate, it happened between the liberal internationalist and the realist between 1930s to 1950s. Okay, this is, you can even read it here. I have taken certain clippings from the book and I have added them here so that you can read it. This was the first great debate. Now let's see that what are the other different world orders that were emerging. Okay, then this world order which was there, which was a very fragile world order, where liberals were trying to do some stuff. This remained till 1945. Now from 1945 to 1990, we saw the emergence of Cold War, where there was bipolarity. After the end of Second World War, we saw the emergence of USSR and US as the two superpowers. They were the two superpowers. And after the end of Cold War, we will see that how USSR was disintegrated. It didn't remain a global superpower, and there was just only one superpower. So there was a brief unipolar moment where US became the global hegemon. So there were rise of superpowers. Now what is the meaning of superpower? What is the keyword that you can use for superpower? Preponderant power. Preponderant power means extraordinary power. They have so much power that all the countries combined together will not be able to counter that power. And ultimately, because there were two superpowers, we saw the emergence of bipolarity. Now we will see that what is neo-realist stability theory. It will come in the lectures, in this lecture ahead it will come, or in the next lecture. What it ultimately means, neo-realist stability theory. This theory says that a bipolar world order, this theory says that a bipolar world order will be the most stable world order. Ultimately, we want to maintain stability in international politics, and different scholars try to tell that what is the way to maintain that kind of stability. So here we see that how whenever there will be bipolarity between when there will be two different superpowers, and the world order that will come in that bipolarity will be the most stable. That is what neo-realist say. Ultimately, what is neo-realist? We will see that also. It's just coming in the lecture. Okay. So why is this stable? That ultimately any state, any other state which are there except the superpowers, they will become the satellites or dependent states of that superpower. So for example, while there was Cold War, we saw that how the countries, like European countries, all the European countries including Japan, including UK, including France, including Germany, including Japan, they all became the satellite states for US. What is the meaning of satellite states? That if this is the superpower, then all small states, they are along with that superpower, है ना? So USSR के अपने satellite state थे, US के अपने satellite state थे. Balance of power is ultimately converted into nuclear deterrence. So ultimately, in the previous world orders, we have seen that how there was the concept of balance of power. Now balance of power has given way to nuclear deterrence. What is nuclear deterrence? That if you have a nuclear weapon with you, then no country will attack you. Which means that if you attack, let's say US, if any country attacks US, for example, let's take more relatable example, that if India attacks Pakistan, we see that how Pakistan keep threatening that we will attack you with nuclear weapons. That is why it is difficult to get into a direct full-blown war with Pakistan. Why? Because it has nuclear weapons. So this is called as nuclear deterrence. We will see the concept of deterrence in the next lecture. Reason being, it is one of the key concepts in IR, which is the 6th topic. So first we are doing the 5th topic. So this nuclear deterrence is also called as nuclear balance of power, or it is also called as the balance of terror. Okay. What was US doing during this world order? What was the goal of US? The US was trying to do containment of USSR. Okay. So containment means that you are trying to encircle the USSR from all these sides so that it cannot grow. It was trying to expand the NATO towards the borders of the USSR, towards the border of the USSR. And ultimately, we saw that because this containment, and there was also concepts like arms race, we saw that how ultimately USSR was collapsed and a new world order was born. So there was end of Cold War from 1990s because USSR disintegrated, and how liberal international world order had its birth. So H.W. Bush, he said that now we will unleash a new world order. He was actually the father of George Bush, है ना? 9/11 में who was the president of US? It was George Bush, and the father of George Bush, he is H.W. Bush. So he said that we need a new world order now, and this will be called as global world order, which means that now again they are trying to say that ultimately we will try to provide that stability to the world order. Let's see. They say that we will enhance the trade, because of which interdependence and interconnectedness will rise. Now Bayliss and Smith, one of these scholars, what they say is that ultimately state-centric geopolitics, which was part of the earlier world order, it gave way to geocentric global politics. Just what we saw in the complex interdependence model. What did we see here? We saw that how state-centric became society-centric in the complex interdependence. So in the same way, what we are seeing here is that state-centric geopolitics is giving way to geocentric global politics, and world is looking more like a multiplex world, which means that there are different theaters of power and it is not concentrated anywhere. There are multiple theaters of power, which means that billiard ball model, which was given by Arnold Wolfers, where nation states are like billiard ball, hard shells colliding, they are now becoming complex CWM, which is the complex interdependence paradigm, which is the cobweb model, and the features which were mentioned here. Borderless world. What is the borderless world? We have seen in chapter 4, we were talking about globalization. So how from the end of Cold War we saw the rise of emergence of globalization, and how Kenichi Ohme, he said that we are now living in a borderless world. That is what globalization stands for, which means that there was declining role of territories. We have read about the concept of global village given by Marshall McLuhan in the last lecture. Flat world given by Thomas Friedman, we have read it. Now complex interdependence, we will read about this concept. It will be coming in just some slides ahead. This was given by Joseph Nye and Robert Keohane, है ना? So complex interdependence means we will discuss, I think it would be better if we discuss it there itself. Anarchical society, we will discuss in the slides ahead. Why I have mentioned it here itself? So that whenever there is a question which is coming on this topic, end of Cold War, you can include all these keywords and scholars. Domestic politics and international politics, which means both are getting interdependent and overlapping. Why? We are seeing that how, for example, domestic policies of certain countries, when they faced a balance of payment issue, they had to go to certain institutions and they had to take up those structural adjustment programs and even shape their domestic policies. So how international politics and domestic politics kept shaping each other in this era. We also witnessed the unipolar movement of USA during this time. What does this mean? Unipolar movement means that USA was the only superpower for some time. So they overreached this unipolar movement. How? They launched a war on terror, where they attacked Iraq in 2003. Then they attacked Afghanistan in reply of the 9/11 attack. And how they started acting like a global policeman. What is the meaning of global policeman? That they will establish the norms, the rules of the world order. They went into endless wars, forever wars. It is said that USA always goes into forever wars. They never know an exit strategy. They also went for democracy promotion in countries like Libya, in countries like Iraq, in countries like Iran. They just want to promote democracy so that they can better control the policies of that country. Grand strategy of primacy, which means that they want to gain the control. Uphold, police and defend the liberal international world order. So whatever Woodrow Wilson said for his vision of the new world order in his 14-point speech, USA is trying to implement all of that here. Okay. Now, what is the present world order? It is the present world order starts from time of 2008, which has given a final blow to the hegemony of USA. So the unipolar moment or the hegemony of USA started from the end of Cold War, which is 1990s. Then the 2001 9/11 attack was a dead blow to their superiority. But it was the global financial crisis in 2008 that finally declared the end of the unipolar movement, because they were not able to hold together their economic powerhouse. So since the 2008 global financial crisis, we are seeing the decline of the liberal international world order, which Woodrow Wilson principles gave, and there is return of the state-centric geopolitics. So there will be society-centric geopolitics, there will be state-centric geopolitics. Liberal says that society-centric geopolitics should be the reality, that is the way for peace. Whereas realists believe that we live in a state-centric world order, we live in a Westphalian world order, we live in a billiard ball model, where states are the most important actors. So we are seeing the rise of state-centric geopolitics. Now Joseph Nye has given the concept of 3D chess board model, where in terms of military power we are living in a unipolar world, in terms of economic power we are living in a multipolar world, and in terms of socio-economic power we are living in a diffused world, which means that socio-economic wise power, everyone is having some power. In terms of economic power, there are certain 4-5 poles which have economic power, for example the BRICS countries, USA, China. And in terms of military power, even today in terms of military power, it is just the USA which has the most amount of power. Now we will begin with the realist school of international politics. अब directly हम key theories पढ़ेंगे realist school की. Let's start with it. Now we have started, so we will study about different schools of thought within the international relations theory, and I have started for you with the most important school of thought, which is the realist school. Now realist school has some assumptions. What is the number one assumption that they have? That it represents the power view of international politics. They see power as the most important element in international politics, and everyone is trying to chase maximum power. What do they say? They say that how. So firstly, some points about the realist school of thought. Within the realist school of thought, it is hegemonic school of thought. What is the meaning of hegemonic school of thought? That there are many different schools, but it is realist school of thought which is actually the most popular one, or it is the most dominating one. So hegemonic school of thought is the most dominant one. This is very, very important part. Now what is the meaning of that? It is a meta narrative. Meta narrative means that there are within realism, there are so many different thoughts within realism, and how it is not like that realism is just one thought. Within realism there are different schools of thought. That is why it is called that is why it is called as a meta narrative. Okay, so it is hegemonic school of thought, it is a meta narrative. That is, within realism there are different schools of thought. Then what is the meaning of meta-ideology? Meta-narrative and meta-ideology. I think I have done a small flip. It is actually the meta-ideology which means this, that it is not a single ideology, and within this ideology there are different components of this ideology or different streams within this ideology. Okay, meta-narrative has a different meaning. I just mixed up these two things. This is one of that confusion which I have had since forever almost. I'm so sorry for this. So meta-narrative means dominant school of thought. If some idea is the most popular idea, let's take an example, that if people are saying that BJP will win the elections in India for the 18th Lok Sabha elections, then that is the meta-narrative, that within the narrative which is the larger narrative. Okay, so liberalism being a hegemonic school, that is a meta-narrative, that the meta-narrative says that liberalism is the hegemonic school of thought within the international relations theory. That is the statement. Meta-ideology means that it is not a single, it is not like that realism is a monolith. No. Within liberalism, there are different theories which have certain differences also. That is the meaning of meta-ideology. Now, some of the features of liberal school of thought. The first is that they believe in Westphalian world order or the billiard ball model. We started the lecture about through the billiard ball model, है ना? And within the billiard ball model, we studied the Westphalian world order as well. I showed you that how Westphalian world order, it starts from after the 30 years of war in Europe, we see the emergence of Westphalian world order. And Westphalian world order and billiard ball model, they are same thing. Okay. So how realists, they believe in Westphalian world order, billiard ball model. Now these are the keywords. Whenever there is a question on realism, you must use these keywords like Westphalian world order, billiard ball model, power view of politics, how the meta narrative is that liberalism is the hegemonic school of thought, however it is a meta ideology. These are the keywords which you have to use. Now, what is the meaning of Westphalian world order and billiard ball model? That is, they believe in state egoism, they believe in state-centric view of international politics, and they believe that states, they act in rational self-interest. All of this we have studied. All these three features we have studied in the billiard ball model. है ना? So, that is why they say that state act in rational self-interest. Rational self-interest means that if one country truly thinks that their own self-interest is being compromised, only then they will come to attack some other country. Okay. Now they have a power view of international politics. Power view of international politics means that they think power as a zero-sum game. They think that if one country is raising the power, then they must be raising the power to counter another country. That is why they will also have to rise their own power. The other party will also rise their own power, and they will again come to a equilibrium. So they believe in balance of power. So they take a power view of international politics. One state's gain is another state's loss. That is, if China is expanding its power, then India will feel that we are at loss. है ना? So plus and minus. They will, though they are not at loss of anything. है ना? If India is having a $4 trillion economy and China is having a let's say $15 trillion economy, if we are growing at a pace of $6 trillion, then we are not losing anything. But we feel that if China is growing, then the relative growth, then the relative gap that is there between these two actors is enhancing, and we are afraid of that relative gap. So there is endless struggle for power. This is a keyword again. So you will see that how the paper of PSIR is all about rotating the keywords, having certain concepts in mind and then rotating the keywords in your answer. International politics is in state of anarchy. Okay, what is the meaning of anarchy? that there is no universal actor and there is self-help system. There was this keyword that was there in the earlier slides, that how every nation has to protect their own self. So there is no supranational authority, there is self-help system. Every country wants to have or ensure their survival, है ना? That is the goal of the nation state, and everyone wants to go for power maximization, which is everyone wants to ensure that maximum to maximum power is there with them so that they can ensure their survival, so that no one attacks them, and self-help is strengthened. So he says realists believe that nations, they are ultimately suffering from security dilemma. What is the meaning of security dilemma? Security dilemma ultimately means that ultimately when you are seeing the rise of some other country in a zero-sum game, that is security dilemma. We will read more about it in the key concepts of IR. Reinhold Niebuhr, he is one of the older theorists in the school of realist school of thought, and he says that ultimately the realist scholars of IR, they are the children of darkness, because they see things from the most darkest perspective, most realist perspective, most crude political perspectives, or the power view of politics. What is the meaning of children of darkness? That is, they take a power view of politics. Or you can say that they take politics as it is, rather than as it should be or as it ought to be. They take politics as it is, most important part. And they reject the utopianism of the Woodrow Wilson. We see that how Woodrow Wilson or the Wilsonian world order, है ना, Woodrow Wilson का जो world order है, how they are very idealist in their different calculations, but they reject all that utopianism of the of the Wilsonian world order. They are saying that no, all of this is not possible. We have to go for enhancing the power of the nation state. Then, who are the people who have given certain works of realist school of thought? In the East, there is Kautilya. Kautilya has said that relations between states are like jungle where the strength of lion prevails. Then Sun Tzu in China. He has written his book Art of War, and even there he has given different concepts of statecraft to ensure the survival of the state. In the West, there is Thucydides, History of Peloponnesian War. This is a book on the politics of Europe in very early days, given by Thucydides. And we will also learn about the concept of Thucydides trap. Very, very important concept that will come aage aayega abhi. So he is called as a father of political realism, and he says that there is no role of ethics among the states, and how human nature, HN means human nature, is power seeking. So this is the most important part, that they have a power view of world politics, which means how they will define that we have a power view of world politics. They will pin it down to the human nature. They say that because human nature is power seeking, that is why ultimately even states will go for maximization of power. They say that for man, fear and self-interest, these two are the most important pillars, and it is the fear and the self-interest that is leading the nation states also to go for more and more power. He says that power is more important than right or wrong. He also says that even God does not help and only the self-help works, which means that no supranational entity can be successful because every nation state will just protect their own interest. Strong do what they have to do, strong do what they have the power to do, and weak accept what they must accept. This is a quote which is given by him. Now, when you are writing an answer, you have to just use these kind of quotes to substantiate your point of view. And that is the whole game. Machiavelli, he is also a realist scholar. He has given the concept of raison d'etat. What is the meaning of raison d'etat? It means that how state has its own political imperatives, state has its own ethics, And what is that ethics? The ethics is to protect the national interest. There is no role of ethics. Basically, he has given the concept of dual morality, which means that ethics is important. He is not saying that do not follow ethics, but he says that the ethics which is there for the other matters, that cannot be there in the state. State will have its own ethics. That is what Machiavelli said. Then Bismarck, a very, very important army general, he said that realism is ultimately realpolitik. That is, we have to do politics on the basis of realism. That is realpolitics, pragmatic politics. Clausewitz, he was an army general of the era of Napoleon. He said that war is continuation of policy with other means, which means that how for realists war is very, very important. They say that war is just the continuation of policy. For nation state, policy is very, very important, and war is just one of the instrument of policies. So they do not look at war in a negative sense. That is the most important part. Liberals will be trying to ensure that we will have peace and there will be no wars. But they are saying that wars are important. It is the continuation of policy by other means. What is Hobbes saying? Hobbes says that the state of nature is anarchy. That is ultimately the different, we have read about Hobbes, we have read about his social contract. Before his social contract, he gives a pre-political society, which is also a pre-social society for Hobbes, where he says that when there will be no centralized authority, we will be living in a state of nature where life will be nasty, poor, brutish and short. And he also says that because of that kind of state of nature, there will be anarchy, where there will be no preservation of life. Hai na? So that anarchy, this kind of concept of anarchy by Hobbes truly inspired the concept of anarchy in international relations. Okay. Now John Hers actually used this concept of anarchy in international politics, and he coined this term of security dilemma. Okay, he coined this term of security dilemma, where ultimately the concept of Hobbes was just developed in the international context, that when one nation state they rise their power, then another nation state will see the rise of their power as a zero-sum game. That is, their gain is their loss. Hai na? Their gain, their loss, and because they have gained and there is loss here, so it becomes a zero-sum game. Hai na? If you combine these two together, it becomes zero, and that is why this nation state will try to emerge to counter the rise that this nation state has had. Now, who are the modern day realists? If you will just read your traditional notes, you will see that you will not see these names. So these names are Henry Kissinger, Zbigniew Brzezinski, George Kennan, Thomas Schelling, Robert Jervis, Herman Cahan. These are some of the modern day realist scholars, and इनके जो works हैं वो last के 30-40 years में आए हैं, and they are the important realist scholars, जिसमें the policy of containment of USSR, this was given by George Kennan. He wrote a famous letter with the pen name of X. What you can do is, my suggestion, what is my suggestion to you? You can just do Wikipedia of these names and just get some idea of their work, hai na? So that you can, in your conclusion or as a value addition, you can use these names. Though all of them, be it Robert Jervis, be it Thomas Schelling, be it be it Kissinger, be it Herman Cahan, they will be coming as we proceed ahead in the IR syllabus, but you can just read about them. Security dilemma. It is a spiral model. What is a spiral model? Let's see. Increase in one state's security leads other states to fear for their own security, and then power becomes a zero-sum game. If China is raising its power, I've explained it multiple times, so I won't explain. Just increase in one state's security, China increasing its power, leads other states to fear for their own security, that maybe they will use these weapons against us, so let's protect our own interest. So that is why they say power becomes a zero-sum game. Okay. Now I have summarized the whole different. So I told that how realism is a meta ideology, which means that how realism is not one monolithic school of thought. Rather, there are different schools of thought within the realism. है ना? So what is classical realism? So there are different schools of thought. Let's see that. There is classical realism. Okay. Then there is neo-realism. The other name for neo-realism is modern or scientific realism or structural realism. These are different names for neo-realism. So classical realism and neo-realism. Within the neo-realism, there are two schools of thought. The first one is defensive realism and the second one is offensive realism. So classical and neo, and within the neo there are defensive and offensive. Now what is classical realism? This was given by Morgenthau, Hans Morgenthau. The name of his book is very, very important: Politics Among Nations and Scientific Man versus the Power Politics. Okay. So these are the two books. You can use any of the books when you are quoting his name. And the subtitle for his book was The Struggle for Power and Peace. Now, हम basic principles तो पढ़ ही चुके हैं realism के. Now we will see different features as per the basis of classical and structural. What are the differences? They say that human nature is the basis. They say that nations, so ultimately both of them will agree, because there are certain features which are common to realism. They both agree on the power view of politics. But now they are trying to give the reasoning for the power view of politics. है ना? So in terms of their reasoning, they say that states go for enhancement of their power. Why? Classical realists will pin it to the human nature. Okay, they will give a human nature level, they will give a unit level analysis. है ना? They will give a unit, actor or unit level analysis. What is the basic unit of this whole world? Ultimately it is the individual. है ना? Each individual are the unit level actors. So they give a unit actor level analysis, unit level analysis, and they say ultimately it is this actor or the human nature. And what is this human nature? That we are ultimately, we want to ensure our self-interest and we are fear-driven. So it is the human nature to explain the nature of international politics and how states are not unitary actors. So the first assumption is that international politics is having a power view of politics because of human nature, because human nature is bad, just like Hobbes said. है ना? So then the second assumption is, they say that states are not unitary actors, which means that it is not like that state is just one actor or they don't have any other dimensions. They say that they are influenced by domestic institutions, quality of diplomacy and national morale and human nature. So this point is not that important, that states are not unitary nature. This is just a value addition which is not there in your, I'm sure they are not there in your basic notes, but there is a value addition that states are not unitary actors and they are shaped by different factors. Now neo-realists, they say that this classical realism and the basis that they have given to human nature, this is wrong. They say that realism is true, power view of politics is there, but the reason is not human nature. The reason is structure. They say that because the structure of, if you will analyze the world order, if you will analyze the international politics, you will see that how there is no universal actor, which means there is no body which can truly, for example, they say that in domestic politics there is state to ensure that there is law and order, but at the international level there is no such body that has that kind of sovereignty. So they believe that the structure of international politics is anarchy, where there is no universal actor, and that structure and not the human nature is the reason for power view of politics and realism. So they give a scientific or modern or structural level analysis to the realism. Now, and this kind of debate between the structural realism and the classical realism is called as the structure agency debate, which means neo-realists or the scientific or the modern or the structural realists, they will believe that the structure of the international politics or the anarchy is the reason, whereas the classical realists like Hans Morgenthau will say that it is the unit level, it is the agency of the human nature which drives the power view of international politics. So this scientific analysis is also named as behavioral analysis because they used certain scientific principles, है? Then how this is a structural level analysis, unlike the actor or the unit level analysis, their method, they study the structure of international politics and finds anarchy to be the reason. They see states as unitary actors, which means that ultimately state is being governed by just the government, and it is the government which will decide everything. None of other things matter. They take pragmatic view of international politics. They say that states are trying to get relative gains. What is the meaning of relative gains? There are two kinds of gains. First is relative gain and the other one is absolute gain. What is the meaning for it? That suppose if USA comes up with some technology through which they are able to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Let's say that USA has came up with a technology through which they are able to remove 100 units of carbon daily from the global atmosphere. Then when they are removing that carbon, gradually after 10 years there will come a time when everywhere on the earth the carbon will reduce. So that kind of technology, that kind of power has given absolute gain. What is absolute gain? That is, if one nation state has done some achievement, it has gained power, it has gained technological power or military power, any kind of power through which everyone is benefiting. There is no exclusion. There is no exclusion at all towards the benefit of that technology. That kind of gain would be absolute gain. Now, what is relative gain? Let's say if India has gone for the new technology like MIRV, we have seen that the Agni 5 missile has gained the technology of MIRV through which multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles are integrated into the Agni 5 missile. Now, can this kind of technology give advantage to everyone else? No. We have just gotten a relative gain over our enemy, that is Pakistan. Pakistan cannot do MIRV kind of attack, we can do MIRV kind of attack. It has strengthened our nuclear triad. है ना? So this is an example of relative gain, where the gain of one country is over someone else. We have gained certain new technology over Pakistan, over China, for example. So this is a relative gain. What does realists say? Realists say, neo-realists are saying that states, they want to achieve relative gains. They do not want to achieve absolute gains. They want to achieve relative gains so that they can get more and more power. Now there are different criticisms. Whenever there is a question on realism or there is a question on neo-realism, we must do the critique. So which all school of thought you will use? We will study all these school of thought as we progress in the lecture. English school, which is the liberal realism school. English school is Hedley Bull, anarchical society. Functionalists are a school of thought within liberalism. Social constructivists, they are different school of thought. Alexander Wendt. Feminist will say something else. Post-colonial will say something else. Postmodern school of thought will say something else. Everyone will present a new perspective to IR theories. So whenever there's a question on neo-realism, we can, or there is a question on realism, you can pick up any one or two school of thought to comment, to show the critique of the realist school of thought. Now, the first is defensive realism, then there is offensive realism. Defensive realism is given by Kenneth Waltz. It is also, he is also been called as detente realist, which means that there was a time, there was a phase in the Cold War when there was a thaw, when there was some shanti in the relations of US and USSR. So it was said that no, realism is not relevant anymore because there is some peace between these two superpowers. So Kenneth Waltz said that this is not possible and there will be rivalry and competition between them, and he said it when there was a detente, when there was some relative peace between these two countries. So he defended realism at that time, and that is why he is called as a detente realist. So he released his work, Theory of International Politics, in 1979. What did he say? He said that nation states are defensive, which means nation states do not want to go for power maximization. Nation states just want to have certain defensive measures to protect their own self. For example, if India has said that we will go for a no first use policy, then it is a defensive measure that we will not attack any country with the nuclear weapons unless we are being attacked by a nuclear attack. So we have went for a massive retaliation strategy and a no first use policy. है ना? So nation states are defensive. This is the most important part. Then he says that ultimately nation states does not want maximum power. They do not want to go for power maximization. There is a concept called power maximization. Kenneth Waltz is against this. Why? He says that if we go for power maximization, then you will see the emergence of counter coalitions. Counter coalitions. What is the example for it? That let's say if we see China, today they are going for the school of power maximization. है ना? There was this school of thought of Deng Xiaoping. Deng Xiaoping used to say that hide your strengths and bide your time. Hide your strengths and bide your time, which means that do not show your strength to the world. Just keep working hard, keep making your nation great, and just wait for the right time to come. But now Xi Jinping is saying that the time has come. They are going for asserting their power in the South China Sea, in the Taiwan Strait, in the Indo-Pacific, in all the dimensions they are being assertive. This shows that they are following the path of power maximization. What has it done? Their approach of power maximization has led to the emergence of a counter coalition to China in the Indo-Pacific in the form of Quad. So the rise of Quad as a balance of power arrangement has countered the rise of China now. है ना? So what does Kenneth Waltz say? That do not go for power maximization. There is no use of going for maximizing your power beyond the limit. Just have sufficient amount of power so he says have sufficient amount of power, not unlimited amount of, not maximum amount of power. Because if you'll have maximum amount of power, then counter coalitions will come up. And sufficient power can ensure security maximization, and how power is just a means and security remains the end. So they say, Kenneth Waltz say that power is just a means. It is the security that is the end. Power is not an end in itself. He says that unlimited power is counterproductive. Why? Other forces will come to form counter coalition and they will balance the hegemony that you will develop through the power maximization. So what are the core principles? They go for sufficient power, not unlimited power. They go for security maximization, है ना? And they believe that nation states are defensive and not offensive. So this is defensive realism. These are the core principles of defensive realism. Now we will come to offensive realism. What is offensive realism? In offensive realism, rather than security maximization in defensive realism, we studied security maximization and limited power or sufficient power. Offensive realism will say that power is the means and power is the end. So go for unlimited power. Okay. Now, but Kenneth Waltz will say that counter coalitions will happen. So to justify the power maximization, the offensive realists say that rather than going for counter coalitions, other actors will become the satellites of the superpower, which means that if you will try to become the most powerful nation, if you will try to go for power and power and power, then all the other states will have no other option but to become your client states, to become your satellite states. Just what happened with the European powers vis-a-vis the America. Hai? So this school of thought belongs to John Mearsheimer. It is the name of the book is Tragedy of Great Power Politics. 2001 में ये किताब लिखी गई. And the name there is a new book with his name, Great Delusions, Liberal Dreams and International Realities. Okay, liberal dreams and international realities. Now what does he say? Security through hegemony. So they believe that offensive realism, defensive realists say that do not go for hegemony, go for sufficient power. They say that no, become the hegemon, become the regional hegemon. None of them believes in global hegemony. This is very, very important to understand. No realist, okay, neither defensive realist nor offensive realist, they do not believe in global hegemony. We have just touched upon earlier in the neo-realist stability theory. In the neo-realist stability theory, we saw that how these thinkers, they think that bipolarity is the most stable world order. So they will never prescribe any nation state to go for global hegemony. They will say that it is not unsustainable. It is not sustainable. So they say that go for regional hegemony, become the preponderant power in your region and go for power maximization. They say that power is an end, power is the means and power is the end. That is, seek power after power. Where was this at display? When we saw the Truman Doctrine, that is ending isolation and starting containment of USSR in 1947. So when from the Monroe Doctrine we saw the Truman Doctrine. Truman was the one who used the nuclear weapons in the Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So they did not truly want to use nuclear weapons just for the sake of ending the war. They wanted to use those nuclear weapons to tell the world that who is the boss. Okay, that was their approach. So what does Mearsheimer says? Mearsheimer says that nation states are would-be hyperpowers. Every nation state want to become the most important power. And every state is offensive in nature. Though they will do defense also, but every state is offensive in nature. They will want to get more and more power. They say that great power competition is inevitable. He says the tragedy of great power politics, that is, this is inevitable. It will happen. And what does he say in the reply of Kenneth Waltz, who say that unlimited power can lead to counter coalitions? Mearsheimer will say that ultimately the smaller states will come and become the satellite state. That is, they will do the bandwagoning. What is bandwagoning? Bandwagoning means that just like all the other small planets around the sun, they are in the bandwagon, they are in the orbits of the sun, and it is the sun who is the the most important actor in our solar system. So just like that in international politics, the state which is most powerful, the state which is the number one power, the state which would be the most offensive in its nature and will keep gaining more and more power, what will happen is that other small states will bandwagon, they will join their orbit and they will become part of that state. What are we seeing? We are seeing different states around in the South China Sea. For example, we are seeing Russia. Russia is bandwagoning towards China. There is no kind of collaboration. It will be China that will be controlling Russia. No amount of power is enough. So this school of thought, this offensive realist school of thought, this comes closer to the school of thought as we saw in classical realism. This is the most important part, that how both of these are as close to each other as it can be. So I hope that this difference, I have presented this difference. I have presented this difference with blue as the keywords, and I've kept it side by side so that you can compare compare also. Okay. So these are the pictures of the all these thinkers, ताकि आपको ये भी याद रहे. Then there is one more school of thought which is called as the neoclassical realism, or it is also called as the post neo-realism. So what is the meaning of neo? So ultimately, सबसे पहले there was classical realism, then there was neo-realism, now there is neoclassical realism, NCR, है ना? This is actually the mix of classical realism and neo-realism. They say that agency is also important, structure is also important. Term is coined by Gideon Rose, and the scholars for this school of thought is Fareed Zakaria and Randall Schweller. Randall Schweller has given the concept of balance of interests. This will come in next lecture. What is the core principle that is there in neoclassical realism? They say that human nature, which was supported by classical realists, and the structure of international politics, which is supported by neo-realists, they say that both are important. Both of them together decide that how realism is there in the world politics. This is a value addition for you. Third world or post-colonial realism. So even in the post-colonial states, we are seeing that how different scholars are coming and giving the realist perspective for these states. For this, we have Muhammad Ayub or Amitav Acharya. है ना? They are giving third world realism. Third world realism का क्या मतलब है? They are telling the countries in the third world that how you should protect your own interests, how you should go for self-help. Do not go to West to enhance your autonomy. Why? Because if you will go to West, you will just be under the rule of neo-colonialism. So they suggest national autonomous development. So this will come close towards the Marxist school of thought. But they will prescribe the states to go for power enhancement. Okay. Now let's start with classical realism. So we have already seen classical realism. Now we will do it at speed. Morgenthau gave the classical realism. This is the name of his book. He gave a critique of liberal rationalism. Liberal rationalism means the Woodrow Wilson 14-point speech. This is liberal rationalism. This is one of the keywords. Liberalism's belief in human reason is not efficient. That is, we saw the rise of Nazi Germany and how liberals were not able to stop the rise of Nazi Germany. They critique science and reason as routes to peace. That is, states were losing touch with the historic traditions of statecraft. Now what is happening is that before the realists, just after the end of World War I, what was happening was that through science and reason, Woodrow Wilson and associated school of thought, they were trying to say that peace is possible, cooperation is possible. So realists, which is Morgenthau, he said in his book Scientific Man versus Power Politics. So this scientific man in Morgenthau stands for the liberal rationalism of Woodrow Wilson. He says that it is liberal rationalism versus the power politics. And how, if you will look at the history, if you will look at Peloponnesian War, if you will look at Arthashastra, Sun Tzu, it is the historic tradition of statecraft. It is the science of realpolitik which shows that power view is the most important view. Now Morgenthau is an exponent of Hobbesian view of human nature. See, again it is a keyword, Hobbesian view of human nature, matlab that life is nasty, pure, British and short, and they take that human nature wala view which we have read in Hobbes. Now classical realism, Hans Morgenthau, he takes systematic view of international politics, influenced by Machiavelli and Hobbes, fearful of utopians of American foreign policy. We have discussed this. He established 6 principles of realism, most important, hai na? Let's look at the blue keywords. What are the blue keywords? He calls them as scientific principles based on human nature. So these are the 6 principles which you should learn. I have given them in keyword format. The first is that human nature is animus dominandi, which means that man is power seeking, hence state are also power seeking. Then he says that national interest is most important for the states and every state want to go for survival. That is, power is the ultimate end of foreign policy. FP means foreign policy. Dual nature of power, just like Machiavelli is given dual morality, he is given dual nature of power, which means power is both the means, power is both the ends, power is both means and ends. This can be connected with the statement of Lord Palmerston, if I am able to recall it correctly. He was one of the Prime Ministers of UK, and he said that there are no eternal allies, there are no perpetual enemies, interests are eternal, interests are perpetual, which means that how realism is at the core. Now he says that nature of national interest is dynamic, which means that it will keep on shifting, embedded in time and space. Change in India's Israel policy and USA policy. For example, earlier we didn't recognize Israel, but today we have a very strong relationship with Israel. Earlier we were very anti-USA in our stance, but today we are, it is said that we are natural partners. So how national interest will keep evolving. What is the method to achieve national interest? Balance of power, diplomacy and deterrence. Balance of power means that you will come together with all other countries to stop the rise of one nation. Diplomacy means that you will engage with other nations, and deterrence means that you will strengthen your own power so that you can counter the power of others, or you can even get certain kind of weapons which will prevent. Deterrence means that you are preventing some other nation to attack you. Why? Because the cost which will that they will have to pay to attack you is way more than they can bear. For example, if India today has a if Pakistan today has a nuclear weapon, then India thinks twice before going towards a conventional war with Pakistan. That's why we went with a preemptive strike. We did a surgical strike, and we said that how it is not a war on Pakistan. So we had to move towards different methods because of the deterrence which Pakistan has established when it comes to nuclear weapons. Then the fourth principle is that how there is no role of ethics in international politics. Dual morality, as we saw in Machiavelli. Pragmatism is the ethics of politics. What is the example of this morality? That we saw that how US was there in Afghanistan. They were talking about democracy and whatnot. But when they saw that they are not able to serve their national interest anymore in Afghanistan, they just left the Afghanistan to the Taliban. Okay. Then how there is no role of ideology, which shows that how USA, though they talk about democracy and whatnot, but they are friends with the monarchies of the Middle East. Why? Because it is because the relationship with monarchies are important for their national interest. Ideologies are just masks. Nations should not bring ideologies, norms, values in relations with the states. It is not that Iran is not an enemy of USA because of difference in ideology. These are the core interests. If tomorrow rulers which will be favorable to US will come to Iran, then they will be cool with it. For example, we are seeing that how Communist Party of China and USA, we are seeing that how on the name of ideology, they are saying that we are in competition with one another, but ideology is just a mask. It is the interest, it is their hegemony that they are trying to protect, that the US is trying to protect. So the example is US and Saudi Arabia's relationship. Then they also give a comment on the nature of international politics. They say that ultimately the nature of international politics should be autonomous of ethics, law and economics. It should have no relation with these three disciplines, and how the nature of international politics is totally independent. Don't confuse it with what are the ethics here. It is not an inspiring field, it is how it is. So these are the 6 principles given by Morgenthau towards his school of realism. There is no role of international organization and law here. There are 3 types of countries. The first country can be status quoist country. Which country will be the status quoist country? For example, we see that how USA is the hegemon. They want to protect the current world order because they are getting benefited from it. Then there is a revisionist power who want to say that we will try to revive the good old days. China used to be the most important middle kingdom through which they were running their silk corridors, and they were very important power. So they are trying to go for the rejuvenation. The great rejuvenation. President Xi Jinping says that we will become a developed country by 2047. Then there are imperialist countries as well. For example, the Nazi Germany. Then there are revanchist power like Russia, which will try to bring back the old days of glory. So what is the other book of Morgenthau? The other book is Scientific Man versus Power Politics. So these are the 2 books. The first book is Politics Among Nations. The first book is Politics Among Nations, and the other book is Scientific Man versus Power Politics. Now, what are the criticisms of classical realism? See, whenever there will be a question on classical realism, you will just have to first explain that principle. Just explain classical realism first, tell its features, then give the critique. So critique is Kenneth Waltz and Benno Wasserman. You can just take the name of Kenneth Waltz. He says that Morgenthau is not scientific in his approach. So they say that human nature is something which is not scientific. Human nature can vary from place to place. Okay. Then liberals, what are they saying? That they say that Morgenthau is taking a pessimistic view of human nature, and how human nature is not that bad. Human nature can be good also. For example, Locke's view. If there is Hobbes' view of human nature, then there is also Locke's view of human nature. And Hobbes taken enlightened self-interest. We have read about what is enlightened self-interest, where we ensure that how cooperation between countries will benefit one another. Stanley Hoffman says that Morgenthau is suffering from power monoism. Power monoism means that there are different factors which are important, and it is not just power that is most important. And when you are saying that power is everything, then you are having a monoistic view towards power. Feminists say that you are neglecting the women perspective and how you are making international politics a masculinist discipline. Hillary Clinton said that human rights are women rights, which means that there should be women perspective in international politics, which is missing here. Sweden, maybe we are seeing the first feminist foreign policy being implemented. Now, how you can conclude feminist foreign policy? That feminist foreign policy say that be neutral, be critical, and they want to have some concern for peace and prosperity and not power seeking theory. What is the example of feminist foreign policy? There was a resolution, UNSC resolution 1325, and it said that we should give women role in decision making in peace and security. Okay. Institutions like World Bank, IMF, UN, they have recognized the role of women-led development. Even in India, we are seeing that how women-led development, it was part of the G20 declaration that was there in India. We talked about how women need to be inculcated into development. So India is also leading the feminist foreign policy. Men make war because war make men. They say that ultimately, what was the quote that we see by Clausewitz? Clausewitz said that war is the continuation of policy by other means. So realists will have a positive outlook towards war, that wars are good, wars are important. But feminist says that men make war, men ultimately go for wars because it is war that make them men, which means that they associate their masculinity, their strength by fighting a war. That is why they go for war. Empowerment of women is only through peace. So they want to establish peace. Now, some of the important concepts within the school of realism are the concept of Thucydides trap. What is Thucydides trap? We read about the thinker Thucydides. He has written the book on Peloponnesian War. But this thinker Graham Allison has given this concept of Thucydides trap. He says that whenever there will be a status quoist power and whenever we will see the rise of a revisionist power that will try to challenge the traditional power, and whenever such scenario has emerged, he says that 12 out of 16 times major wars have happened whenever we have seen the rise of a revisionist power trying to counter the status quoist power. Okay, that is what he says. And this can be used in context of US and China. That is, war is more likely than not. In past 500 years, 16 cases in which there is a rising power that threatened the existing ones, 12 times war broke out. So you can use it in the context of US-China rivalry. Now, what is Kindleberger trap? Kindleberger trap, I can try to explain you, but certain important points are needed for that. So maybe बहुत अच्छे से बाद में clear हो, but I am trying to explain to you right now itself that there is a theory called hegemonic stability theory. And this hegemonic stability theory, it is given by Charles Kindleberger. So Charles Kindleberger gave this hegemonic stability theory. Just like neo-realist stability theory, the two neo-realists, which are Kenneth Waltz and John Mearsheimer, they will say that bipolarity is more stable. If you will have two superpowers and there are different two groups, then balance of power will be maintained and there will be no war. And they do not take a positive view of the hegemon. For example, when US became the hegemon and there was no bipolarity after the end of Cold War, then neo-realists said that this is just a unipolar movement and it will not last for long. Okay, so they take a negative view of the hegemon-led world order. But there is one school of thought, this theory is called as hegemonic stability theory. This is given by Charles Kindleberger, and the other name is Robert Gilpin. R-O-B-E-R-T, Gilpin, Robert Gilpin. So Gilpin and Kindleberger says that whenever we will see a hegemon, whenever we will see one superpower that will become the hegemon and how they will try to lead the world, then they will provide certain global public goods. What do we mean by global public goods? That they will ensure that certain public goods like the right to navigation, right to peaceful navigation in the global seas, or right to clean environment, they will become the global policemen, and they will try to enforce rule of international law in the global politics, and that will bring peace. Okay, that is what hegemonic stability theory says. We will read it in detail. But what is the Kindle-Berger trap? Joseph Nye, who belongs to the liberal school of thought, and he has given the theory of complex interdependence. Same Joseph Nye has also given the concept of Kindle-Berger trap. He says that we are witnessing a scenario where China is emerging as the superpower. They want to replace USA and they want to become the only superpower, but they are not capable and willing enough to provide those global public goods which USA was providing. So how there will be a global governance gap within the world order? That is, we will not have many players who will go for protecting the freedom of navigation, and how countries will have to protect their own freedom of navigation, which can further create anarchy. So hegemonic stability theory says that hegemon ensures supply of global public goods. Kindle-Berger trap means that there is a reluctant superpower. That is, the willingness and the capacity is not there, and there will be decline in supply of public goods. So he says that we are witnessing a China which is too weak rather than too strong, which means that as a global hegemon, they are not that strong like USA was, and they will fail to deliver public goods. So when we are talking about the rise of China, you can use this concept of Kindle-Berger trap, which contests the rise of China as the next to be superpower. Now, these are the feminist critique of Morgenthau. Most important is by Anne J. Tickner. The name of the book is Gender in IR. Now she has countered the 6 principles of Morgenthau. She says that there is role of ethics in political science, there is emphasis on human security, not just national interest, but we need to go for human security. So what are the 6 principles? She says that Morgenthau's human description of human nature is culturally defined. That is, you are saying that human nature is based on a power view of politics, but she is saying it is culturally biased. Then national interest can't be described only in terms of power, it is multidimensional. We need to also ensure human security. Power is not just what Morgenthau is talking about, that just go for military power and all that. There can be constructive sense of empowerment as well. If you go for raising the capabilities of the people, even that is power. Politics can't be separated from ethics, so ethics is important. And how she rejects the autonomy. We saw that how he made international politics autonomous of the law, ethics and economy and all those principles. She says that Morgenthau is taking a very narrow view of politics, and international politics is not autonomous. Nothing can be autonomous. Everything is interdependent on one another. So this lady, remember her name, Anne J. Tickner. Sorry. Anne J. Tickner. Okay, Anne J. Tickner has given this view. Then Cynthia Enloe, the name of her book is Banana Beaches and Bases. So she is saying that how women have been given very insignificant role when it comes to the formation of international politics. She says that where are the women? And women have been given subordinate roles. Women have been given the roles where they are just, being the diplomat's wife, and they are not being in the decision-making positions. So absence of women in decision-making, and there is also violence against the women. Okay. Carol Cohen, the name of her book is Sex and Death. She said that masculinist culture is there while we are making foreign policies. Only more and more men are making those foreign policies, and we are seeing that how there is divorce of war from human emotions. For example, the Bucha massacre. The Bucha massacre, or other example can be the Rafah bombings. The Rafah bombings in Israel and Hamas conflict. We are seeing that how there are different refugees, there are different normal citizens that are there in Rafah, and Israel is, despite all of that, Israel is bombing. Then in Bucha massacre, we see that how Russia, there are claims that Russia went for a lot of massacre of the normal people in a small town called Bucha, and all those war crimes kind of activities have been done. So Carol Cohen says that we are witnessing a divorce of war from human emotions. Okay, you can use these two examples. She is Carol Cohen and she is Cynthia Enlow. Then J.B. Elstein, the name of her book is Women in War. She says that there is masculinist foreign policy which leads to a distorted worldview. That there is a distorted worldview. Why? Because ultimately international politics or foreign policy is masculinist in nature. So feminist foreign policy will only be there when we will give sensitivity about the consequences of masculinist foreign policy, which is we need to tell that how masculinist foreign policy is the reason for wars. Only then we will be able to give birth to feminist foreign policy. Then Margit Wallström, she was the former deputy PM of Sweden. She has given these principles for the formation of feminist foreign policy. She says that we need to go for human security, and human security is something which is very wide. This is something which is very wide. What is the meaning that it is something which is very wide? This means that ultimately how different elements are involved, how the health is also important for foreign policy, how education is also important for foreign policy, because ultimately the core goal of nation is to protect the human that are living there. Feminist foreign policy, it ensures actual expression of real person. What is the meaning of this? That when we are talking about masculinist foreign policy, then we are seeing that how national interest is constructed and it is claimed that it will serve the interest of each people, but it is for the interests of certain elites. So you can bring in the elitist. You can bring in the elitist theory here. We have studied about the elitist theory of power. Robert Mitchell's, C. Wright Mills, Pareto, Mosca. What does each of them say? They talk about the concept of power elites. They talk about the concept of iron law of oligarchy. They talk about the concept of theory of circulation of elites. They say that ultimately that how certain elites are constructing the policies. So feminist foreign policy will be the one where policies will not be designed by the elites. Rather, it will be for the real persons. Feminist foreign policy ensure women right in both war and peace, women as agents of change. Okay. Empirical feminism, what is this? That sexist exclusion of women and women's issues from conventional analysis. Now, this is what India is fighting against. In the women-led development part, in the G20 declaration, we are seeing that how women perspective must be there. Male-dominated international institutions are also an issue. So this is empirical feminism. Okay. Now we will start with the difference between structural realism. Within the structural realism, there are two schools of thought: defensive realism and offensive realism. Though we have studied it, let's look at the main keywords that are there here. Anarchy is timeless wisdom. What is the meaning of this? Anarchy defines the structure of international politics. The absence of a global actor. It shows that how war is the only way forward. How there will be no one to protect the weak actor. है ना? So anarchy is timeless wisdom. Timeless wisdom means it is relevant forever, and it becomes the permanent feature of international politics. That is what is the view of structural realist. Why? They believe that the structure, that is the anarchy, is the reason for the power view of politics. है ना? Unlike classical realists who believe that human nature is responsible. Then who coined this word the first time? Who coined this distinction between offensive and defensive realism the first time? It was Jack Snyder in his book Myths of Empire. He gave the distinction between offensive and defensive realism in IR theory. So, a distinction first time किन्होंने किया? Jack Snyder ने. We have already seen the difference between defensive and offensive realism while we were on this slide. So now we will quickly just see the important parts. Defensive realist will talk about security maximization. Offensive realist will talk about power maximization. The purpose for defensive realists and the purpose of power for defensive realists is that we need to go for systematizing plus empirical theories. That is, we need to ensure that there is reinvigoration of realism, and we need to detach it from the classical roots. So basically, realism, the classical realists, they made realism unscientific by talking about human nature, which is not objective in nature. So they want to introduce certain behavioral trends like systematizing and empirical theories and giving certain empirical data to revive realism, because realism was in decline. When Kenneth Waltz gave his work, we were in the phase when there was a detente. So realism was questioned. Okay. So they say that we have to go for principles of realism on scientific basis. Now, what is the methodology that they use? They use structure level analysis. They go for structure of international politics and not human nature. What is the context? There was a detente phase of Cold War, and they were challenged. Certain people like Nye, Joseph Nye and Keohane, which we will study in liberalism, they challenged the status of realism. So his goal was to prove realism as timeless wisdom. In 1979, we saw the re-emergence of Cold War, and it is in the same year where he also wrote this book of Theory of International Politics. So we talked about these features: states as unitary rational actors, where they exist in a self-help system. What is the meaning? That states are unitary actors. They are not interdependent on different other factors within the nation states. And every nation state is a rational unitary actor. The people who are governing the state will design their policies. Structure of international politics is anarchical. That is, there is no world government. There is security dilemma. I have explained what it means, that there is struggle for power, and how the structure of domestic politics within the nation state, within the domestic level, we see that how there is a state and that state upholds the order, but there is no such thing in international politics. There is no such option, and they have to take up, the states have no option to protect themselves, and that is why they have to have more and more arms, and that is why there is anarchical structure. Then he raised this point of functional differentiation. What does it mean? There is a structural differentiation between international politics and domestic politics. That is, in domestic politics we have specialized differentiation. There is judiciary, there is legislature, there is executive. So there is specialized differentiation between different arms of the government. But there is no such thing in international politics, and all states has to perform similar functions. Then he says that capabilities of states differ with respect to the amount of power. That is, every states have different power, and hence every states have different capabilities. And how states are security maximizers and not power maximizers. This we have talked about. Then he says that because international politics is not being driven by human nature, then who is the president of one country and who is the prime minister of another country, it does not matter. It does not matter that whether Trump comes or whether Biden comes. United States will follow one specific path of policy which is good for them. What is the example for this? That it was President Trump who launched the Abraham Accords, but even when President Biden came, he only went ahead with with the Abraham Accords. He didn't come back on that. You see it. You see the competition that is there between US and China. All of this started with Donald Trump, but now even when Biden is there, they are continuing with that policy because the structure of international politics is asking them to go for that. So they say that there is no freedom to different actors, and how there is elimination of the personality factor. It does not matter whether there is Trump, Xi Jinping, or different actors on the international stage. Their nation state will have to go on a specific path because of the structure of international politics. So they say that foreign policy reflects continuity and structural constraint. They restrained the choices that different countries have. Okay, so even any president or prime minister, they do not really have the autonomy to do something which is totally out of the blue. They will have to have certain continuity depending on the need of the national interest. Foreign policy makers compelled to go for power. Okay. Now what will offensive realists say? They talk about power maximization. So this, he came in the post Cold War era, and he was opponent of Iraq war or war on terror. Why? Because USA was trying to become a global hegemon, and he said that this hegemony is not sustainable. You will commit hegemony, you will commit imperial overreach. है ना? Great powers go for achieving hegemony which is regional in nature. Do not go for global hegemony. Context: there was a question mark on the status of realism. Why? Because there was end of Cold War and cooperation was rising. There were rise of different global conventions, WTO, and globalization. Everything was going fine. And the focus that John Mearsheimer is giving is on US and China relations. So there was a lot of positivity about the US-China relations. There was George Bush, then there was Bill Clinton, and then there was Barack Obama. So Barack Obama was very positive about US, China, and everything. And even all the different presidents before Barack Obama, they were also very positive about China. They used to think that we will integrate China in the globalization era. We will integrate them into the WTO, and then they will move towards political modernization, and we will be able to introduce democracy there. And how China will not try to counter US. That is what their view was. So it was Mearsheimer who said in 2001 that China is the #1 rival power of USA, and it is not possible to have cooperation with China. So he says that China is principal challenger to US hegemon. There can be no peaceful rise of China. So all the politicians of that era were talking about the peaceful rise of China. He said it is not possible. China is increasing its power for dominance and not security. So he said that when China is gaining more and more power, they are not just trying to do it in a defensive manner. They are an offensive power, and they will go for power maximization, and they will cross USA as the #1 power. It is there where he say that states are power maximizers and not security maximizers. He also quotes China. He also quotes Napoleon, who said about China that China is a sleeping giant. Let it sleep, for when it will wake up, it will shake the world. That is how it is one of the most strongest power. Now he also gives certain suggestions that what states should do. So he says that in terms of direct actions, state can go for war, but it is costly. Then state can go for blackmailing. It is cost effective, but may not work every time. Then he gives the most important policy, which is of offshore balancing. What is the meaning of offshore balancing? One of the most important concepts. Offshore balancing means that if USA is trying to be the most important power in Indo-Pacific or in Middle East, then it cannot do it all alone. It should find certain regional partners who will carry the burden of the cost for maintaining a counter coalition there, है ना? So for example, we are seeing that in Indo-Pacific, USA has partnered with Japan, Australia and India, the three middle powers, and they are following offshore balancing through Quad. USA is following offshore balancing through Quad. And what is India doing? While India is going for Quad, they are following the policy of balance of power. That they are trying to balance the China through Quad. But USA is trying to go for offshore balancing. They are asking Japan, Australia, India to contribute to the agenda of countering China. In the same way, I2U2 is also an example of offshore balancing, where USA wants the regional partners in that region to contribute more towards that purpose. Now, what are indirect actions that states can take to ensure their interests? The first one is buck passing, which means shifting the burden to some other country. For example, India को ऐसा बोलते हैं, India is a swing state. That is, we can always go from one actor to another actor in terms of partnership because we have no alliances. So India is a swing state. We can swing the balance of power from one party towards another. Bait and bleed, that is support one country which is usually weaker against other and let them bleed. So what is happening between India and Pakistan? That Pakistan is China is supporting Pakistan, and Pakistan is the weaker nation, okay? And India and Pakistan, they keep their rivalry on, and between this, it is the China which is emerging because both of them are having rivalry with one another and they are able to secure their rise. Now, what is bloodletting? Ensure two countries keep fighting, there is no regional power that is emerging. Now, if you see what is happening in Europe. In Europe, what is happening is that there will eventually come a time when Russia and other European powers will keep fighting. And it is in the larger interest of USA that this war keeps on. This war doesn't stop. So that Europe and European powers like France, Germany, UK, they do not emerge as the more stronger powers. For example, if Germany and France, if they were able to buy cheap oil from Russia, then their economic growth was rising. USA covertly do not want that. So now the war is situated in Europe, the Europeans are fighting it, and US is pretty much happy. They are pretty much happy that Russia is busy in the war, so Russia will also be not able to enhance their power. European countries will not be able to enhance their power, and US will be able to focus with their competition with China. Okay, that is bloodletting. Now, Kenneth Waltz, he has given the work Man, the State and the War. Here he has given 3 image analysis. What is 3 image analysis? He says that the cause of war are there because of 3 level of analysis. Okay. So here he says that the first one is the individual level, which is what classical realists say, that the nature of particular statesmen, for example, personality factors like Napoleon, Saddam Hussein or Putin, that is how human nature will also impact that whether state will go for war or not. So he says that individual is also one of the factors. Then he says that the second factor is the state, which means war caused by the domestic makeup of these states. So, though they believe that states are unitary actors, but they say that this might also have some of the role. Lenin's theory of imperialism, Kenneth Waltz say that capitalist state needs to keep expanding for new markets, which means that if a state has capitalist model, it is a capitalist state, then it will keep finding new markets. US will always want to promote its exports to other countries so that its own economy can grow. And because of that, they will be happy to go for regime change, to go for war and install puppet regimes. So, democratic peace theory actually says that non-democratic states make wars. We have seen we will see it in liberal theory, in the liberal theory of international relations. Democratic peace theory is given by Michael Doyle. It says that the non-democratic states, so basically wherever there is democracy in two states, there will not be war. That is what DPT says. So this argument that how the internal makeup of the state can determine that whether there will be war or not is supported by DPT also. Now the third one, Kenneth Waltz has given man, the state and war. है ना? So man means the individual, the state means the domestic makeup of the state, and then the war. Then he says that out of these three analyses, the third one is the most important one, which is the international system. He says that this describes the framework of the world politics and how cause of war at systemic level is actually the anarchy, which is that ultimately there is no world government and there is only self-help that is work. No sovereign governs interaction between autonomous nation states. There is no truly sovereign, there is no truly powerful institution through which the states can talk to each other and which can protect one state from another state. And because of that anarchy, because of that no institution which is there at the world level to protect nation states, that is why states go to war, which we see in the Russia-Ukraine war. That ultimately United Nations emerged as a very weak institution when it comes to preventing the Russia-Ukraine war or the Israel-Hamas conflict. Okay, so confused nahi hona hai. As per Kenneth Waltz, this is the reason for war, but he says that these are also the two reasons which are said to be there, but the most important one is this only. Okay,